All right, so now we go to the third segment of our weekly show, People in the News, where we will analyze the Vedic astrology birth chart of a noteworthy person.
And I have just the nominee for our analysis this week.
Let me guess.
The boy who will be king.
Oh, yes, the royal increase has finally arrived, and you are already predicting that he's destined to take the throne.
Yes, when looking at the chart of the Queen, the chart of Prince Charles, and the chart of Prince William, I predict that the Queen will not abdicate, Charles will never be crowned king, William will ascend to the throne in his early 40s, and the crown shall pass to this new prince in 2051 when he enters his Jupiter major period, barring a worldwide ecological apocalypse before that year.
Oh, really? Okay, David, that's quite a pronouncement. How about if we just start with the boy's chart for now?
Oh, I suppose so, if that's all we can fit in today.
All right, so it looks like we are dealing with a Scorpio rising person, born on a full moon, and the moon is in Capricorn. This prince has his rising degree in the lunar sign Vishaka, which is symbolized by the triumphal gateway. So this is about setting goals and attaining them. And it is a sign preoccupied with victory. Meanwhile, his moon, and it is nearly exactly a full moon that he was born on, is in Capricorn, a practical goal-oriented sign, and in the Uttara Ashada Nakshatra, a lunar sign associated with power and leadership, and whose name translates actually as the ultimate victor.
Sounds like the new prince is all about getting things done. So first off, what I notice about this chart is Venus, the planet of love, is in the royal sign, Leo, in the 10th house of public life. When Venus occupies the 10th house of deeds in public, it indicates good deeds and affirms the idea of being loved for what you do out in the world. And this child's chart shows difficulties for the mother or problems with the mother. The 4th house is mother, containing the sign Aquarius in a Scorpio rising chart. Thus Saturn becomes the ruler of the 4th house of mother, and Saturn is placed here in the 12th house of separation and institutions. Plus, when you add the fact that Rahu is there as well, quite likely his mother Kate will be off doing official duties in far-off places.
Okay. And another part of the chart, we see here he has a very powerful 8th house. Here we have Mercury, the ruler of Gemini, which is the sign of the 8th house, is occupying the 8th house itself and thereby boosting the significations of the 8th house, such as inheritance and longevity.
At the same time, Mercury is the ruler of the 11th house of gains and rewards. So the planet representing gains is strongly placed in the house of inheritance, thus combining the meanings of these two areas of life.
Right. And Mars, the ruler of the 1st house, which represents the self, joins up with Mercury, the ruler of the 8th, in the 8th, and that further boosts all of the 8th house significations.
To top it all off, folks, Jupiter is in the 8th house as well. So besides being a general wealth indicator, Jupiter rules the 2nd house of his chart of money and the 5th house of his past life credit.
Okay, so we see that his 8th house is a really big part of his chart. So let's go a little further with this analysis. We'll go over to the lunar zodiac, and we notice that these 8th house planets, Mercury, Mars, and Jupiter, are all in the lunar sign Ardra, a sign noted for intelligence, helping others, and personal catharsis. So it sounds like the future king has really a lot going on in that department.
So even though the 8th house is generally considered evil in Vedic astrology, in this chart, some of its more positive significations can come to the fore.
Right. It's still the 8th. It is still the 8th house, though, and so some of the other less desirable themes will doubtlessly manifest.
Things like clandestine activities, scandals, Anybody who would be king has to be able to deal with palace intrigue, or these days just really dealing with leaders from other countries.
Right, who can be rather irascible. Anyway, okay, so to survive as a ruler and be effective in leading your country, you have to be able to reinvent yourself. Another theme of the 8th house is regeneration and rejuvenation, and the sign is Gemini. Gemini is one of the most adaptable signs of the zodiac. Anyway, there's lots more to talk about this chart, so shall we move on to some other areas?
Yes, we will, and I have something that is definitely in a different area. He's got an intense combo of Saturn conjunct Rahu in the 12th house of institutions, which for him is Libra. And when you look at the fact that Venus, ruler of the 12th, is in the 10th, drawing energy from that combo to the 10th, you have to wonder how this will affect him. Should he become king? After all, the British monarchy is quite the institution, to say the least. Your thoughts on that, Ron?
Yeah, well, let's not forget that the 12th house is also the house of charity and humanitarian acts. And when it gets ruled by a natural benefic planet, in this case Venus, and gets connected to the 10th house of actions in public, what it is, it's the sign of a philanthropist.
And what about Saturn and Rahu in the 12th?
Okay, well, Saturn is exalted in the sign Libra, enabling its highest expression of humble self-denial in the service of others, or service of a cause, in the case of Libra, some societal ideal, which Libra is known for. Also, Saturn is the ruler of the 4th house, which is the house of heart and soul. Literally, his soul is in the 12th house of humanitarian acts. So Prince George will find happiness in helping those who are much less fortunate than he is.
And Saturn is with Rahu, and Rahu is the significator of outcasts. What do you get when you are born with Rahu in the 12th house?
Well, there's this general meaning of Rahu indicating some of the lessons that the soul has to learn in this lifetime. So Prince George has to pay attention really to all of the 12th house significations.
The 12th house is the house of separation, seclusion, the subconscious, the psyche, unknown places, unknown people, pleasures of the bed, places of confinement. The list is pretty long. And some of the indications are not so. Some of the significations are not so desirable.
Yeah. Well, how about let's take the remaining time and have a look at how his karma plays out during his life. So, he's born in a Sun major period, and Sun is the planet of royalty.
And his Sun is in the sign Cancer, which is the general sign of the public, and the 9th house. And in the 9th house of good fortune and destiny.
Right. So he goes into, after the Sun major period, he goes into his Moon major period in 2016 before he's even 3 years old. So Prince George goes through childhood with his Capricorn full moon fully activated, and that would indicate a very powerful connection with Mother, since Moon is the significator of Mother.
The Moon is also the ruler of Cancer. The sign is in his 9th house of destiny, and 9th house is also father. And the Sun, which is also in his 9th house, is the general significator of father.
Right. So it sounds like his early years are completely dominated by his parental relationship and what is going on in their lives.
Then he goes into his Mars major period when he's 12. Mars is the ruler of Scorpio, his 1st house, representing himself. The Mars Dasha also brings in his 6th house of work and service. And since Mars is in the 8th house, it turns on all that 8th house karma for 7 really intense years until he's 19.
Yeah, it looks like the prince will have a lot of attention on him while he's a teenager. Do you want to hazard a prediction for when he becomes king?
Well, my scan of his chart points to his Jupiter major period. Jupiter is not only the greatest benefic, but also for Scorpio rising, brings in the karma of the 5th house of past good life credit, as well as the second house of family. All of it manifesting through the position of the eighth house of inheritance. That's when he inherits the throne.
Okay. And his Jupiter major period begins in 2051 when he's 38 years old. All right. So that's all the time we have for today. So I guess we'll have to leave it at that for now.
Thanks, Ron.
All right.